The moment Karen stood up in the HOA meeting and screamed, "Your daughter should be sentenced to the electric chair," the entire room fell into a graveyard silence. Even the ceiling fan seemed to stop mid-air, like time itself paused to process the insanity of what she had just said. My 14-year-old daughter, Emily, flinched as if the words themselves struck her. She grabbed my hand, her eyes wide, shimmering with fear. Karen's face was twisted with rage, fingers stabbing the air toward my child as if she were pointing at a convicted criminal. The neighbors gasped, some whispering, some shaking their heads, but no one dared to speak. They didn't know who I really was. They didn't know the power I carried. Karen thought she was bullying another helpless family. She had no idea she was threatening the daughter of a federal judge. Before I begin this story, I want to ask you something simple. Which city are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing how far my stories travel across the U.S. And if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe before we start. I promise this one will stay with you long after the video ends. Alright, let's begin. This story takes place in a quiet, picture-perfect American neighborhood, the kind with neatly trimmed lawns, patriotic mailboxes, and an HOA board that behaves more like a small government than a community committee. I moved here for peace. After years of deciding the fate of criminals in federal courtrooms, I just wanted my daughter to grow up in a place that felt safe. Emily is gentle, empathetic, and still healing from the emotional scars of a medical battle she fought years ago. She's soft-spoken, sensitive, and the last kid who would ever cause trouble. But to Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, Emily was an offense, a rule breaker, someone who needed to be taught a lesson. Karen's obsession with control was bad, but that day, she crossed a line so unthinkable, even the board was left speechless. A petty complaint turned into a storm of hatred. A minor disagreement twisted into an outrageous accusation. And then, Karen demanded that my daughter, a child, should face the electric chair. She had no idea who she was talking to. She had no idea what storm she had just unleashed. The HOA meeting was supposed to be routine, an hour of boring discussions about recycling bins, driveway cracks, and the neighborhood barbecue. I never imagined it would become a moment that tore the mask off our community and revealed the monster hiding behind a pastel cardigan and a fake smile. Emily and I walked into the clubhouse, quietly, hoping to sit at the back and slip out unnoticed. She wasn't a fan of crowds. Ever since her medical trauma years ago, large groups made her anxious. I squeezed her shoulder gently. "You'll be fine," I whispered. She nodded but didn't speak. The room smelled of fresh coffee and disinfectant, the kind of scent you get in school cafeterias and churches. Folding chairs were arranged in rows. People chatted softly, and at the front, where she always stood, was Karen. Her eyes locked onto Emily instantly. Not on me, not on the other adults. Straight on my daughter. Like a predator spotting prey. She tightened her lips the moment we walked in, as if our presence alone insulted her existence. Karen was the kind of woman who believed the HOA bylaws were sacred scripture, and she was the chosen prophet sent to enforce them. Anyone who challenged her, or simply lived a life she didn't approve of, became her personal obsession. For weeks, she had been targeting Emily for small things. "Your daughter left her bike on the lawn for 3 minutes. Your daughter stood too close to Mrs. Turner's flowers. Your daughter walks too slowly on the sidewalk. She's blocking people." Slowly? Emily had a neurological condition that affected her balance, something Karen knew. Because I had explained it the very first day. But Karen didn't care. Empathy wasn't a muscle she possessed. She thrived on conflict. She fed off control. Tonight, I realized she wanted a spectacle. The meeting began with the usual nonsense. Maintenance updates, mailbox theft rumors, noise complaints, when suddenly Karen tapped her microphone. "We need to address a serious violation," she said dramatically. Every head turned. I felt Emily stiffen beside me. I took her hand. Karen flipped through a stack of papers with unnecessary force, then lifted her chin. "This violation involves a minor, a repeat offender." Her eyes landed on Emily again, and her father, who seems to believe the rules don't apply to them. Murmurs filled the room. People looked at us, confused, uncomfortable. Karen, the HOA treasurer, whispered, "Maybe this should be a private." "No," she snapped. "This is a community matter." She stepped closer. "In the last 30 days, this child," she pointed directly at my daughter, "has committed 5 violations. 5. Blocking sidewalks, disturbing landscaping, loitering near private property, creating a safety hazard." And she held up a photo taken from her phone, trespassing. The photo showed Emily stepping onto the curb to avoid a speeding car. A normal human reaction. But Karen had twisted it into a crime scene. "Are you serious?" I said, my voice calm but edged with warning. She stepped aside to avoid being hit. Karen slammed the photo down. "This community is not a playground. Children cannot just roam around putting others in danger." "She wasn't in anyone's way," I said. "She was in mine," Karen snapped. People shifted in their seats, uneasy. Even Karen's supporters seemed unsure where she was going. But she wasn't done. Her eyes darkened with something ugly, something unhinged. "This child," she said, "is a danger to the order of this neighborhood. And if our normal penalties don't work, then we need to escalate." My heart thudded. Emily squeezed my arm, trembling. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked. Karen leaned forward, her voice rising. "I'm suggesting that this girl," she jabbed her fingers so aggressively the microphone screeched, "should face consequences severe enough to teach her a lesson she'll never forget." The room fell silent. People whispered nervously. Karen, her face red with theatrical fury, turned to the board. "I propose," she said, "that this child be given the harshest punishment allowed under our rules." "There is no harsh punishment for children," the HOA vice president muttered. But Karen wasn't listening. Her voice rose again, louder, harsher, dripping with madness. "This girl should be sentenced to the electric chair." It was so absurd, so monstrous, so distorted that the room seemed to implode. Chairs scraped. Someone gasped. Someone else laughed in disbelief, then realized Karen wasn't joking. Emily stumbled backward, her face pale, tears welling. In that moment, that frozen, horrifying moment, everyone stared at Karen like she had finally revealed the demon inside her. I stepped in front of my daughter, shielding her. My voice remained dangerously calm. "Karen," I said slowly, "you've crossed a line that you can't come back from." But she kept going, her voice cracking with hatred. "If she can violate rules like an adult, she should face punishments like an adult." People exchanged horrified glances. Several whispered, "She's gone too far." Then Karen made her final mistake. She pointed at me. "You defend her like she's above the law," she snarled. "But she's not. Nobody is above the law here." I stepped forward. The room held its breath. "You're absolutely right," I said. "No one is above the law." Karen smirked. She thought she had won. She thought she had broken us. But then I said the words that sucked the remaining breath out of the room. "And since you care so much about the law, perhaps you should have checked who I am before threatening my child." The room leaned forward. Karen blinked. I continued, my voice steady and cold. "I am a federal judge, and you just demanded the execution of a minor. That, Karen, is not a rule violation." I took one step closer. "It's a crime." Karen's face drained of color. Murmurs erupted. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" Another whispered, "She's finished." Emily gripped my arm, finally breathing again. Karen stuttered, "Why you're lying?" "You're not." "I hold the authority to put dangerous criminals away," I said. "And trust me, I know one when I see one." The room exploded into gasps. Karen's eyes widened as the reality hit her. Everything changed that night, and justice was only just beginning. Karen didn't move at first. She stood frozen in place, fingers curled around her stack of papers, eyes trembling with the shock of what she'd just heard. The room around her shifted, neighbors stepping away from her, some covering their mouths, others whispering like they had just witnessed a public execution of her dignity. For the first time since I had moved to that neighborhood, Karen looked small, not powerful, not intimidating. Just small. But the silence didn't last long. Is he serious? He's a judge? She threatened a kid? Oh my God, we could all get sued. The room filled with a sudden panic, not toward me, but toward her. People who used to stand beside Karen now looked like they wanted nothing to do with her. She could feel it too. Her neck stiffened, and her face twitched as if her body couldn't decide whether to cry or explode. Finally, she whispered, "You're bluffing." I didn't blink. "Would you like to see my credentials?" Her throat tightened. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean it literally. It was a figure of speech. A figure of speech used to demand the execution of a minor, I replied. And you said it publicly with witnesses. Gasps echoed again. People shuffled even farther from her now. Karen stumbled, her voice shaking. Why, you're twisting my words. No, I said calmly. You twisted your own humanity. Emily squeezed my hand. She was still trembling, still pale. I placed my arm around her shoulders. One of the board members stood up, Mrs. Lewis, a kind woman who had always treated us warmly. Her voice was steady, but her expression was stern. Karen, you owe this family an apology. A real one. Karen whipped toward her. I don't owe anyone anything. That girl disrespected the community rules. She's a child, Mrs. Lewis snapped. And she did nothing wrong. And you, Karen spat out, are always defending outsiders. That was the moment everyone saw it clearly. The hatred wasn't about rules or violations. It was something darker. A need to dominate. A need to control. A need to crush anything that wasn't like her. The treasurer stepped forward. Karen, we need to end this meeting. This has gone far beyond HOA jurisdiction. But Karen refused to let it stop. No, he thinks being a judge makes him untouchable. He thinks he can break rules without consequences. I turned to Emily. Let's go, I whispered. We had no reason to stay. But as I guided my daughter toward the door, Karen yelled, "Stop! Don't you walk away from me!" Her voice cracked so sharply it startled half the room. Emily flinched. I slowly turned back. What more could you possibly want? Karen's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her anger had mutated into desperation, the kind that makes people dangerous. You think you're better than us, she said. You think your daughter is above everyone. But she's not. She's a troublemaker, a disturbance, a liability. My jaw tightened. I stepped closer, not to intimidate her, but to make sure she heard every word. You don't get to define my daughter, and you don't get to terrorize her. Terrorize? She repeated, hysterical. I'm enforcing the rules. By demanding a child be executed? I said, that's not enforcement. That's abuse. Before she could respond, Mrs. Lewis crossed the room and placed a firm hand on Karen's arm. That's enough. You're done tonight. Go home. Karen yanked her arm away. No, I will not be silenced in my own community. But the community had already turned its back on her. People were packing their bags, stepping out the door, shaking their heads. A few whispered apologies to me as they passed. Karen stood alone now. Her supporters were gone. Her authority shattered. And that's when something inside her snapped. She stormed toward us, her heels clacking like gunshots on the tile floor. You think this is over? She screamed. You think I'm scared of you just because you sit in a fancy courtroom? Karen, back up, I warned. My voice was calm but firm, the same voice I used to silence chaotic courtrooms. But she didn't stop. She pointed at Emily again. I'll make sure she pays for everything she's done. I'll make sure this community knows the truth about her. I stepped in front of my daughter, my voice colder than ice. You take one more step toward my child, and this becomes a criminal matter. Karen froze mid-step. Her face twitched violently. She looked around, realizing everyone was watching, not with support, not with sympathy, but with fear. Fear of her. For a moment, it seemed she might back down. But then she whispered, almost too softly to hear, "This neighborhood will never accept you. Or her." Emily hid behind me. I felt her shaking. I leaned down to her. "Don't worry," I whispered. "I've got you. You're safe." We walked to the door together, my arm around her. But just as we stepped outside, I heard Karen behind us, her voice trembling with rage, pain, and something else. Something that didn't feel finished. Something obsessive. Something dangerous. "This isn't over," she screamed. Her voice echoed down the hallway. "You'll regret challenging me. Both of you will." The door slammed behind us. The night air hit us like a wave, cool, quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos we'd just escaped. Emily wiped her tears with shaky fingers. "Dad, why does she hate me so much?" I knelt down in front of her. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Some people hurt others just because they can, but I will never let anyone hurt you." She nodded, but her eyes stayed worried. She could feel what I felt, too. This wasn't just an HOA drama anymore. This was personal, very personal. As we walked to the car, I saw a shadow move behind the clubhouse window. Karen, staring, watching, her silhouette still trembling with fury. That night, I realized we weren't dealing with a normal bully. We were dealing with someone unstable. Someone who didn't care about rules or consequences. Someone capable of anything. And she wasn't done with us yet. Not even close. The drive home was painfully quiet. Emily stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass under the passing streetlights. Every few seconds, her shoulders trembled, not sobbing, but holding back the kind of fear she wasn't used to feeling. I hated that. I hated that someone like Karen had inserted fear into my daughter's life. When we pulled into our driveway, the neighborhood looked peaceful, porch lights glowing, sprinklers misting lawns, dogs barking in the distance. A world that looked safe on the surface, but danger had already seeped into its cracks. As we stepped inside, I tried to lighten the mood. "How about we watch a movie tonight?" Emily shook her head. "I just want to go to bed." I nodded. "Okay, sweetheart." She hugged me tightly before heading upstairs. That hug told me everything she couldn't say out loud. After tucking her in and making sure she felt safe, I went downstairs, poured myself a glass of water, and sat at the kitchen table. My mind replayed the HOA meeting again and again, every word echoing like a warning. This child should be sentenced to the electric chair. You'll both regret challenging me. This isn't over. My instincts, sharpened from decades of reading criminals, sociopaths, manipulators, told me Karen wasn't done. Her rage wasn't going to cool down overnight. People like her didn't retreat. They escalated. I took a deep breath. I had dealt with gang leaders, corrupt officials, violent offenders, yet something about Karen's irrational hatred felt unpredictable. Then bang! A loud crash outside shattered the silence. I shot up from my chair and rushed to the window. A dark figure sprinted across my lawn. Too fast to see, clearly. My pulse spiked. I unlocked the door, stepped outside, and scanned the yard. The air was chilly, carrying that eerie, damp smell of freshly watered grass. The street lights flickered. Something was off. And then I saw it. My trash bins had been overturned. Not knocked by wind. Deliberately. Aggressively. My jaw tightened. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone wanted to make a point. I grabbed my phone and activated the security feed. There it was, grainy but visible. A woman-shaped shadow running down the sidewalk in a stiff, frantic stride. I didn't need HD clarity. I knew that silhouette, that posture. Karen. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself not to react out of anger. Confronting her now, in the dark, would only feed her obsession. Instead, I went back inside, checked every lock, and sat on the couch with the security monitors on. Not because I was scared for myself, but because my daughter was asleep upstairs, and her safety was non-negotiable. Hours passed. At 2:14 a.m., a soft buzzing from my phone jolted me. A text from an unknown number. "You think you can humiliate me and walk away?" Another message came instantly. "Your daughter will pay for what you did." My breath stopped for half a second. The ice-cold realization washed through me. She had crossed the line. Again, I typed back, "Who is this?" Even though, deep down, I already knew. 3 dots appeared as she typed, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, the message came, "I warned you." No name, no explanation, Just that chilling, taunting sentence. I saved the number immediately and forwarded it to a contact from federal security who still owed me a favor. I attached the video clip too. But even with evidence building, I knew legal steps took time. Karen wasn't thinking rationally. She was acting emotionally dangerously. And impulsive people often act before consequences catch up. The next morning, sunlight filtered into the living room, but it didn't feel warm. Emily came downstairs slowly, wearing her oversized sweater, the one she used whenever she felt insecure. "Good morning," she whispered. I smiled softly. "Sleep okay?" She hesitated. "I had nightmares." My chest tightened. "About last night?" She nodded, her fingers tightening around the hem of her sweater. "I dreamed she was banging on the door and yelling, and she swallowed. And you were gone." I pulled her into a hug instantly. "I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." But inside, a storm brewed. Karen had already stolen one night of sleep from my child. She wasn't going to get another. After breakfast, I took Emily to school early, making sure she walked safely inside before driving back home. As I pulled into the driveway, I froze. There, on my front porch, was something that made my stomach drop. A white envelope, placed neatly, intentionally. My name was written on it in messy, angry handwriting. I didn't touch it with bare hands. I grabbed a towel from the car, picked it up carefully, and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 4 words scrawled in black marker. "Control your daughter. Now." No signature, no threat spelled out, but it didn't need one. I marched into the house and locked the door. I scanned every window, every corner, every blind spot, because this wasn't HOA drama anymore. This was stalking, targeting, harassment, and it was escalating fast. My phone buzzed, a call from Mrs. Lewis. Her voice was tight with worry. "Judge, I need to tell you something. Karen didn't go home peacefully last night. She was shouting in the parking lot. She said she was going to finish what she started." My blood ran cold. "Finish what?" "I don't know," she whispered, but she was unhinged. Even her friends left her standing there alone. I closed my eyes, inhaling slowly but deeply. Karen wasn't just angry anymore. She was spiraling, breaking, and the more isolated she became, the more unpredictable she would get. That afternoon, while Emily was still at school, I installed additional cameras around the house, back door, side alley, garage entrance, and my daughter's bedroom window. I checked every angle twice, every setting, because I could feel it like a cold hand pressing against the back of my neck. Karen was planning something bigger than overturned bins or angry notes. Something emotional, something dangerous, something irrational. And before the sun rose again, I would learn just how far she was willing to go. Because that night, the night after the HOA meeting, Karen would cross a line so dark, so insane, so destructive, that our entire neighborhood would never forget it. Night fell earlier than usual that day, or maybe it only felt that way because my nerves were stretched thin. Ever since the creepy text messages and the letter on my porch, my entire house felt different. The shadows looked sharper. The quiet felt louder. Even the gentle hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounded like a warning. I double-checked the security cameras before making dinner. Front yard, clear. Side alley, clear. Back door, clear. Bedroom windows, clear. But clear didn't mean safe. Not anymore. Emily sat at the dining table, pushing her food around her plate. Her appetite was gone, replaced by worry that her young mind didn't know how to process. "Dad," she whispered, "is she going to come back?" I wanted to tell her no. I wanted to promise her that everything was fine. But lying to her would have been worse. "I don't know yet," I said gently, "but I promise you this, no one is going to hurt you. Not while I'm here." She nodded, but her eyes stayed down. That spark she used to have, the innocent glow, was dimmer. Karen had done that. Karen had taken something from her. And that was something I could never forgive. After dinner, I walked Emily upstairs and checked her room. Again, making sure every window was locked. I placed her night lamp closer to her bed. She always slept better with the soft glow touching the corner of her room. "Do you want the hallway light on too?" I asked. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, please." My heart cracked a little. Emily was 14. She never needed hallway lights before. I kissed her forehead, whispered goodnight, and went downstairs, where I stayed awake, sitting on the couch, watching the security feeds like a guard dog. At 11:48 p.m., the motion sensor beeped. Side alley. Movement detected. My spine straightened instantly. I clicked the feed. A shadow moved past the fence, slow, cautious. Too slow for an animal. Too deliberate. It paused, then took another step. My pulse kicked into overdrive. I turned the volume up. There was no sound, but the body language told me everything. Whoever it was didn't want to be seen. Then the figure moved closer to the camera's blind spot. But just before disappearing, the light from the neighbor's porch caught her face for half a second. Blonde hair, sharp jaw, narrow eyes full of hatred. Karen. I moved before I even realized it, grabbing my phone, rushing to the front door, switching on the exterior lights. Bright beams exploded across the lawn. But the alley was empty. Karen was gone again. Fast, quiet, practiced. I dialed security, sent the footage. But deep down, I knew reporting wasn't going to stop her. Not tonight. I locked every door again, checked every window again, placed a chair against the back door. Not because it could stop someone, but because I would hear it if it moved. Hours passed. 1:03 a.m. 1:29 a.m. 1:52 a.m. Nothing. And then, bang, a deafening thud struck the back of the house. I jumped up, grabbing the flashlight. Another bang, harder this time. Something, or someone was hitting the back wall. I moved toward the kitchen cautiously, every instinct on high alert. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the same unknown number. "Come outside." I froze. Then another text. "Come out now." And then, horrifyingly, a third message, or "I'll come inside." My blood ran cold. I bolted upstairs in seconds, checking on Emily. She was still sleeping, curled under her blanket, unaware of the danger circling our home like a predator. I gently closed her door and went back downstairs. This time, I grabbed the baseball bat from the coat closet, not because I planned to fight, but because no parent stands empty-handed in front of a threat. I opened the back blind slowly, pressed my forehead to the glass to see through the glare. Nothing. Just the dark lawn and swaying branches. Then, thud. Something hit the window, right where my face had been a second earlier. I jumped back, heart pounding. I leaned forward again and saw it. A rock. On the ground. With paper tied around it. A message. Delivered like a criminal warning. Hands shaking, I unlocked the door and reached out for the rock, stepping back inside immediately. I unwrapped the paper. For new words. "I see her window." My stomach dropped. Heaven help me, she was targeting the bedroom window. My teenage daughter's window. A surge of rage shot through my body, hot, violent, primal. That wasn't HOA anger. That wasn't annoyance. This was a predator eyeing her target. I moved quickly, turning off all downstairs lights and going room to room to check for breaches. The side of the house, the fence, the garage, and then my phone buzzed. A new text. A picture. My breath stopped. It was a blurry nighttime photo of my house from across the street. But not just any angle. The photo was zoomed toward the second floor. Toward Emily's room. Toward her curtains. My hands clenched. This was no longer harassment. This was not about rules. This was not about anger. This was obsession. This was stalking. This was dangerous. I immediately called the police, explaining everything clearly, calmly, precisely. They dispatched a unit, but response time in our suburban zone wasn't immediate. So, until they arrived, I stood guard. Every instinct I had ever developed as a judge, every warning sign, every gut feeling was throbbing in my body now, and I felt it in my bones. Karen wasn't far. She was close, watching. Hiding somewhere near the property line, waiting for the right moment to strike again. At 3:11 a.m., red and blue lights finally flashed down the street. Police officers walked the perimeter, searched the alley, the backyard, the street. They found footprints, fresh, small footsteps, female, leading away from my house toward Karen's. But she didn't answer her door. Lights off, curtains closed, house silent. The officer returned to me and said, "We can't force entry without probable cause, but we'll patrol the area tonight." I nodded, but I knew the truth. Karen wasn't going to stop because a patrol car drove by. She wasn't scared of laws anymore. She wasn't scared of neighbors. She wasn't scared of consequences. She was only scared of losing control. And we had taken that control from her. When the officers left, I checked on Emily again. She was still asleep, peaceful, innocent, unaware that danger had stalked her window that night. I stood there, gently brushing her hair back, my chest tightening with a mixture of love and fury. Because now I knew, without a doubt, Karen had crossed every line of sanity. And soon, very soon, I would have to stop her myself. For my daughter's safety, for her life, and for justice. Sleep became a luxury after that night. I didn't tell Emily about the rock, the note, or the picture of her window. She'd already lost enough peace. I didn't want the fear living in her mind the way it was living in mine. But I wasn't passive. The next morning, before Emily even woke up, I was on the phone with a detective I knew from a previous federal case. I sent him screenshots, the texts, the rock, the porch letter, and the camera footage of Karen creeping around the house. "This isn't just harassment," he said after a pause. "She's escalating. We can open a file and push for a restraining order. But it might take a couple of days." Days. Karen wasn't operating on that kind of timeline. She was driven by obsession and humiliation. The HOA meeting had cracked something inside her. Being exposed in front of her kingdom was something her ego couldn't absorb. Still, I took every step I could. I updated my home security system, notified the school, informed the principal to never release Emily to anyone except me. He didn't argue. One look at the evidence, and his whole posture changed. If she even steps near school grounds, he told me, "We're calling the police." But the one place I couldn't control every second of was home. That evening, I made sure everything was locked early. I cooked Emily's favorite dinner, trying to give her some sense of normal, pasta, garlic bread, and a cheesy movie after. For a little while, it worked. We laughed. She leaned on my shoulder. And for an hour or two, Karen was just a shadow in the back of my mind. But fear doesn't disappear. It waits. Around 10:30 p.m., Emily yawned. "I'm tired, can I go to bed?" "Of course," I said. "I'll be up in a bit to check on you." She hugged me longer than usual. That always meant something in our house. "Thank you for protecting me," she whispered. "You never have to thank me for that," I replied. "It's automatic." She smiled faintly and went upstairs. I stayed downstairs, lights dim, security feeds glowing softly on my phone. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that lets your mind replay every threat. "You'll regret challenging me." I see her window. "Your daughter will pay for what you did." I set my phone on the table, keeping it angled toward the cameras, and forced myself to breathe slower. 11:07 p.m. 11:19 p.m. 11:32 p.m. Nothing. And then at 11:41 p.m., the camera at the front yard detected movement. I grabbed my phone. The grainy night vision image flickered, and there she was, Karen. No more hiding in shadows or creeping along fences. She walked straight up to my driveway. No mask, no hood, just a twisted, determined expression on her face. My chest tightened. Her posture was different tonight, not frantic like before. Steadier, decided, like someone who'd made up their mind and couldn't be talked down again. I moved to the front window and peeked through the side of the curtain. She stood in the middle of my front yard, looking straight at my house. She knew I was awake. She wanted me to see her. I dialed 911 immediately. 911, what's your emergency? This is Judge Michael Carter, I said, my voice steady. I have an escalating stalker situation at my residence. The suspect is currently on my property. I have prior reports filed and documented threats toward my minor daughter. The dispatcher snapped into full focus. Is the suspect armed that you can see? Not visibly, I said, but she has threatened my child repeatedly and tried approaching her window last night. We're dispatching units now. Stay inside. Do not confront her unless you or your daughter are in immediate danger. Immediate danger. That was the phrase I lived my life defining for others. Now, I was living inside it. I watched Karen through the glass. She took a step forward, then another. Instead of heading for the door, she turned her head slowly and looked up at Emily's window. My stomach dropped. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear her, but I could read the shape of the words. I see you. I bolted for the stairs. Emily? I called quietly but sharply. Don't open your curtains. Stay away from the window. I reached the top of the stairs just as Emily's door opened. She rubbed her eyes, confused. Dad, what's happening? Back in your room, I said gently but firmly. Go sit on your bed. Do not go near the window. Do you understand? Fear flooded her face instantly. Is it her? Yes, I said, but I'm here. The police are on their way. You're safe as long as you stay in here. I closed her door, leaving it slightly cracked so she wouldn't feel trapped, then headed back down. As I reached the bottom step, I heard it, the door handle. Karen was testing it, trying to see if it was locked. Then came the first bang. She hit the door with her hand hard. Open up, she shouted. Her voice pierced through the hallway, like a siren. I stayed 3 steps back from the door, close enough to hear every word, far enough to keep some distance if she tried to force her way in. Go home, Karen, I called out. You're trespassing. The police have already been notified. You ruined me, she screamed. You made me look insane. You turned everyone against me. You did that yourself, I replied, my voice level. Walk away while you still can. She laughed, a sharp, broken sound. You think you're the only one who can decide punishment, she shouted. You think your bench makes you God? Another hard slam against the door rattled the frame. You embarrassed me in front of everyone, she yelled. You took my power. So, I'll take something from you. My jaw clenched. What are you talking about? Silence. Then, in a lower, chilling tone, she said, I'm here for your daughter. Every protective instinct inside me detonated at once. You're not coming near my child, I said, my voice dropping into a calm, deadly register I usually reserved for sentencing dangerous criminals. Leave my property, right now. She pounded the door again, more frantically this time. She doesn't belong here. She's a disturbance, a problem. People like her don't fit in communities like this. She needs to be taught. She's a child. I roared back, and if you take one more step, I will ensure every legal consequence possible falls on you. The sirens sounded in the distance, faint, growing. Karen heard them too. For a moment, I thought it might stop her. That maybe, finally, reality would cut through the madness. Instead, she snapped further. You think you can hide her behind that door forever? She shrieked. You think bars and laws will protect her? People like her deserve the harshest punishment. I cut her off. Enough. You've already threatened her life in public. You're on camera, on record, and now you're at her house threatening her again. Walk. Away. There was a pause, a strange, eerie quiet. Then her voice softer. I saw her in that window, she said. I saw the fear on her face. That's what you deserve. That's what you feel when people like me finally stand up. My grip tightened around my phone. Lights flashed outside. Finally, 2 police cars pulled up, tires crunching against the curb. Officers jumped out, hands ready, voices firm. Ma'am, step away from the door. I watched through the side window as Karen turned toward them, shaking her head furiously. She's the dangerous one. She's the problem. They're ruining this community, she shouted, pointing back at the house. The officers moved in. Their tone was not gentle. They'd seen enough. Hands where we can see them. Now. For a moment, I saw the war in Karen's eyes try to fight or fold. Her delusion versus reality. Reality finally won. Her arms lifted, trembling as they cuffed her. I'm the victim, she screamed. He's manipulating everyone. He thinks he's above the law. I opened the door then, staying behind the officers. I am not above the law, I said quietly. I live by it. And tonight, it protected my daughter from you. She lunged forward slightly, but the officers steadied her. You haven't seen the last of me, she cried. You and that girl will pay for this. Karen, I interrupted, my voice calm but cutting. This isn't your HOA anymore. This is criminal court territory now. Her expression twisted with realization. For the first time, she looked genuinely scared. As they guided her toward the patrol car, one of the officers turned to me. With the evidence you've got, texts, footage, threats, we're looking at stalking, harassment, trespassing, maybe even terroristic threat toward a minor. This isn't going away for her. I nodded slowly. My eyes weren't on the officer. They were on the upstairs window, where I knew Emily was peeking through the curtain, searching for reassurance. When the patrol car finally drove away, red and blue lights trailing down the street, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. I locked the door, walked upstairs. Emily was sitting on her bed, knees pulled to her chest, tears in her eyes. Is she gone? She whispered. I sat beside her and pulled her into a hug. She's gone, I said softly. And this time, the law is officially involved. She can't come near us again. Are you sure? I pulled back, looked her straight in the eyes. Yes, I said, because now, this isn't just a father protecting his daughter. This is a federal judge making sure justice is done. Emily nodded, burying her face into my chest as she finally let herself cry. And as I held her, one thing became crystal clear. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about every person who abuses rules and authority to crush the vulnerable. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. Karen's arrest wasn't the end of the nightmare, but it was the first time in weeks I slept without constantly jolting awake to check the cameras. Emily finally slept peacefully too, curled under her blankets, her breathing calm and steady, something I had desperately missed. But the battle wasn't over, because Karen wasn't done fighting. The next morning, I received a call from the detective. Judge Carter, she's refusing to cooperate. She's claiming she was set up by you. She's insisting your daughter is lying, that the evidence is fabricated. She's demanding a hearing. Of course she was. Karen couldn't accept consequences. She couldn't accept the idea that she was the danger, not the neighborhood, not the HOA board, not the imaginary rule breakers she obsessed over. Her delusion was her jail cell. I'm familiar with people like her, I replied. Prepare the case. I'll provide sworn statements and security footage. The detective paused. You know, this is going to be messy. She's unstable, and she's furious at you. I'm aware, I said, but for the first time, she'll face a judge she can't intimidate. The irony wasn't lost on him, on me, on anyone who'd seen what Karen had turned into. The courtroom showdown. 2 weeks later, I wasn't behind the bench. I was sitting on the witness side of the courtroom while another federal judge presided. I wasn't allowed to participate, only to testify. And honestly, that was harder, because watching my daughter walk into a courtroom to describe what she had lived through, that broke me in ways I never admitted out loud. She sat in the witness chair, small, nervous, her hands twisting in her lap. But her voice didn't shake as much as I expected. Can you tell the court what happened the night the defendant approached your home? The prosecutor asked gently. Emily glanced at me. I smiled softly, encouraging. She straightened her shoulders. She came to our house late at night. She yelled. She tried to open the door. She said she was there for me. Her eyes dropped, but she kept speaking. I was really scared. The judge leaned forward. How old are you? 14. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Then Karen's attorney stood up. Emily, did you consider that maybe my client was just upset? Maybe she didn't mean to threaten you? Emily swallowed. No, she meant it. How do you know? Emily looked directly at Karen for the first time since that night. Because she looked at me like she hated me, Emily whispered, like I wasn't even a person. Karen shifted. Her lawyer tugged her sleeve. But she wouldn't stop glaring. The prosecutor rose again. No further questions. Emily stepped down, walked toward me, and leaned gently into my side. I wrapped my arm around her. Then came my turn. As a federal judge, I had testified before, but never like this. This wasn't about a stranger. This was about my daughter, my home, our safety. I explained the text messages, the late-night stalking, the threats, the rock with a note, the picture of my house aimed toward Emily's window, the trespassing, and the HOA meeting where Karen demanded a child be given the electric chair. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Finally, it was Karen's turn to speak. Her attorney advised against it, but Karen insisted. She stood, spine stiff, eyes burning, her voice laced with venom. "This entire neighborhood has turned against me," she snapped. "I was enforcing rules because nobody else would. That girl," she pointed directly at Emily, "was constantly breaking community guidelines. Someone had to teach her discipline." The judge raised his hand sharply. "You will not point at a minor in my courtroom." Karen ignored him. "Their family thinks they're special. He thinks he's God because he's a judge. They humiliated me. They manipulated the board. I did nothing wrong." The judge's face hardened. "Ms. Harding," he said slowly, "do you understand the severity of the charges against you? I understand that kid is a problem and you're all blind." Gasps filled the courtroom. Her attorney buried his face in his palms. I stared at Karen. For the first time, I didn't see anger. I saw emptiness. A void where empathy should have been, where logic should have been, where humanity should have been. She wasn't just dangerous. She was lost. The judge finally spoke, and his voice cut through the air like steel. "Ms. Harding, your behavior has demonstrated a continuous, escalating threat toward a minor and her family. Your refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing, your lack of remorse, and your violent fixation make you a danger to this community." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I'm issuing a full restraining order. You are prohibited from approaching within 500 feet of the Carter family, their home, their workplaces, or their child's school." Karen stiffened. In addition, the judge continued, "You will undergo psychological evaluation and mandatory counseling. You are barred from all HOA positions permanently. And finally, for criminal harassment, stalking, and trespassing." Karen's eyes widened. Her jaw dropped. She finally realized this wasn't HOA court. This was real, and real consequences were coming. You are sentenced to 6 months in county jail, followed by supervised probation. The courtroom erupted. Karen screamed. Her attorney tried to calm her, but she only became more unhinged. "This isn't fair," she shrieked. "I'm the victim. You're ruining my life." She jabbed her finger again, "is the reason everything fell apart." I stood then. Not to speak, just to look at her, directly. "Karen," I said quietly, "you ruined your own life. The moment you tried to destroy a child." She froze, not out of respect, not out of guilt, but because the truth finally hit her like a brick. For once, she had nothing left to say. The officers cuffed her. She didn't fight this time. Her body sagged, with a mixture of rage and defeat. As they led her out of the courtroom, Emily slipped her hand into mine. "Warm, trusting, safe," she whispered. "Is it really over now?" I knelt to her height, looked into her eyes, and said, "Yes, sweetheart, it's over. This time for good." We walked out of the courtroom together, stepping into sunlight. A normal day, a safe day, a peaceful day. Something Karen had tried to steal from us, but she failed. Because justice isn't just a concept. Justice is protection. Justice is truth. Justice is the shield that stands between the innocent and the unhinged. And that day, justice won. If this story moved you, make sure to like the video, leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from, and subscribe for more powerful real-life inspired stories like this one. Your support helps me keep creating emotional, suspenseful stories that stand up for the vulnerable.